Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me today to explore Job as a Jesus type. I'm here in my backyard in my tiny little patio. Not everything in life is as it appears, so you can see some flowers in my fence, but then you can see there's lots of work to do. Hope to have that done in the next month or so. Well, I'm very excited to share with you the book of Job because it was when reading the book of Job several years ago that I feel like God was sharing with me and showing with me a Jesus type in the book of Job. So let's explore this together, and don't be too distracted as I keep looking down because I've got my notes and I don't want to forget to share some of these highlights with you. So why Job a Jesus type? Or is Job a Jesus type? Let's explore this together. A couple of things that are really interesting about the book of Job is, one, that it's said to be one of the oldest books in the Bible, even older than the book of Genesis. And two, what's really interesting is that the story of Job is kind of a mystery. It's a guy who suffers a great deal, yet God calls him a great guy. And one of his a guy that's blameless and he's upright and all these great things. So it's like, why would such a good guy suffer if he didn't really deserve it? So let's start at the very beginning of Job. And it's spelled like Job, by the way, in the Bible. And if he may be a JT. So he's described as being of good character. This is in the very, very first sentence of Job, okay? The very first chapter, the very first verse, it says he's a good character, he's a righteous man, he's blameless, he respects God or fears God, and it also says that he's rich too. He has lots of servants, he has lots of animals, thousands of animals, and he also has 7 boys and 3 girls. He stays very connected to God. In fact, he intercedes for his kids. So that means he kind of stands in the gap between kind of like God and to his kids. So his kids, for example, they have parties, they'll have birthday parties, and and Job is afraid that maybe the kids might have sinned, or just in case they've sinned, he offers a sacrifice so that they could be cleared out. So he stepped in the gap. And by the way, Jesus did this for us as well. He stepped in the gap for us between God in the spirit, from Jesus here in the flesh, to ourselves. So it's kind of like us, Jesus, and God. And Jesus stands in the gap. He's a mediator between God and ourselves. So just in a little bit, you'll see that Job suffers immensely. He suffers multiple ways and agonizing ways. In fact, in just a short time, all his servants die. His thousands of cattle die, and some of them are stolen. And then his children die. And ultimately, he himself is struck with an illness, and he wishes he would die. And in fact, his wife says he should curse God and die. The first half of the Bible, which is known as the Old Testament, and this is before Jesus actually was physically born, often sin is a result of some type of, suffering is some type of result of sin. That's typically how it's laid out in the first half of the Bible, known as the Old Testament, before Jesus dies. But what's interesting is that's not the case of Job. His friends even come around him to try to comfort him, but they judge him too, and they say, "What'd you do, Job? Why is God punishing you so bad?" Job feels horrible. He actually wishes that he was never born, but he never does actually curse God. So why did this happen to Job? So let's go to the beginning. Satan in verse 7. So this is, again, the very beginning of Job. It's the very first chapter, and it's verse number 7. So Satan has a conversation with God because God says, "Hey, Satan, where have you come from?" And Satan says, "Oh, I've been roaming back and forth in the earth." And then the Lord said to Satan, "Well, have you considered Job?" Okay, a few pauses here. It's kind of interesting because he's saying, "Hey, Satan, where'd you come from?" And Satan's like, "I've been roaming." And God's like, "Well, have you considered Job?" Don't you see like there's a gap missing in between there? We're missing, like if you were to ask a friend, like, "Hey, friend, where'd you go? And they say, oh, I went to the store. And then you're like, hey, have you considered, or I've been walking around. Hey, have you considered something? It just seems like there's something missing here. And it's not necessarily missing because God already knows the character of Satan. Character of Satan is to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And in fact, later on in the Bible, so in the New Testament, in Peter, it says, stay alert and watch out because the enemy, the devil, he prowls like a roaring lion for someone to devour. So we already know the character of the devil. He's not just like taking a Sunday stroll, like, wow, what a beautiful day. The earth is so great. I'm just getting my steps in. No, he's pretty purposeful. And again, his intentions are bad. His intention is to kill, steal, and destroy. So then God says, well, have you considered Job? There's no one on earth like him. He's blameless. He's upright. He's a man who fears God and shuns evil. Okay, at this point, I was pretty shocked. I'm like, really, God? You're doing that to one of your, top guys? Like, you're just saying how awesome Job is, and now you're just throwing him under the bus for Satan to devour him and snap him up? Like, why would God do that? And so the other thing too is it almost seemed like God was serving up Job to Satan purposefully. So Satan replies, says, well, because you're blessing him, that's why he serves you. But if you take away all these blessings, he's going to curse you and basically deny you. God's like, all right, go ahead, try it. But one rule is you just cannot kill Job. That was the rule that God said to Satan. And then it hit me again. Oh my gosh. Job seems like a Jesus type. Okay, because in verse 1, earlier on in the book, it says that Job is righteous. He's upright. He fears God, right? Shuns evil. But it also says in all the earth. So it says Job lives in an area called Uz. And in the east, he's like the top guy. But also in all of the earth. The whole earth. So it hit me that Job is righteous, he's blessed in the whole earth, and if he's the strongest guy out of the whole earth, then that means everybody else is not as strong as him. And if that is true, and if Satan is roaming around the whole earth to see who he can devour, it implies that Satan could easily devour somebody who's not Job. So in this implication, it seems that God is serving up Job to Satan as a Jesus type, as an offering, as a sacrifice, to say, hey, Satan, I already know you're trying to roam around and trying to snatch up whoever you can snatch up, but I'm going to save them because I care about people on the earth. But you can spend your time on Job because he's such a strong guy that he's never going to deny me. So not only are you not going to get the whole earth, but you're also not going to get Job. So Satan, and of course in his arrogance and in his power play, he's like, all right, I'm up for the challenge because he thinks he can still mess with Job. Additionally, in chapter 2, so the very next chapter, but in verse 3, it said God says that Job is, of course, he's blameless and he's upright. But it's also interesting that it says that Satan is stirring up God to ruin Job without reason. So it's not like God is just saying like, hey, it's a bright day out here. Let me just serve up Job to Satan. No, God already knew that Satan was looking for mischief, and God had an answer. So it's not like God is saying, here's Job, and everybody just have at any strong believer. No, it's saying, hey, I already know what Satan's plans are, and I have an answer to it. God's not just creating problems or creating something. He's got a solution and an answer for something that the enemy is trying to destroy. So we might ask, is Job a Jesus type? And I believe God is showing this as an absolute yes. God was foreshadowing a Savior to come, a mediator, so that the world could be saved through one righteous man in all of the earth. I want to let you know there's good news. Job is restored. He never died from the sufferings at the hand of Satan. He even talks to God throughout later on in the book of Job, and to have a little bit more of an understanding. And then he receives in the end, new cattle. He receives new children. In fact, he gets 7 sons and 3 daughters, new. And now, because the story of Job was written so long ago, before Jesus was ever even born, there's no way that Job could ever have guessed what a JT is or what Jesus is. But because you and I, we have the Old Testament Bible and we have the New Testament Bible, we can see signs and we can see an imprint of a Jesus type all throughout the Bible, and even now all throughout the world. And just like Jesus is the greatest sacrifice, Jesus and Job were obedient and faithful to do the will of God. I'd like to encourage you to check out the whole story. I'm going to put some links below. Check out the whole story of Job. It is 2 hours. If you listen to audio, you can get dramatized version, so it can, maybe be a little easier on the ears to understand the different characters. But you'll see that there's just such interesting dialogue with God, and now that we can see the whole big picture. I'd also like to have you encourage you to download the Bible app if you prefer reading over listening over audio. And of course, to see the opportunity where Jesus is showing himself throughout the Bible, foreshadowing Jesus, foreshadowing a mediator to come in between us, to save us, to love us, because God knows the big picture. He knows what's happening, with the enemy and his plans. So he's got an answer. We may not always see it and we may not always know it, but God has an answer. So I'd love to encourage you to see Jesus, know Jesus, be a Jesus type. And if you're new to the concept of Jesus, maybe in your own heart, just reach out and say, God, if you're real, or Jesus, if you're real, show me. And I'd love for you to share the video or add any comments, subscribe. There's a notification bell if you want to get the next few videos that are coming. And I'd love to see you again in the very near future. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you soon. Bye-bye.